Welcome to this 10th episode of Dropping Pebbles in the Pond, and it's the finale of season 1 this time. So whereas sometimes we've been going into a Zoom room afterwards, because it's the finale of this season, there's no Zoom room. But we are live on a variety of platforms. So wherever you're watching, be it Facebook, and that's a fingers crossed, LinkedIn or YouTube, and whether you're watching live or watching the recording, welcome to my show. As usual, I invite you to settle in, grab a brew or your favorite tipple and a notebook, because I do have a few questions for you towards the end to reflect on, and I'm imagining you might want to make some notes as we go. I'll also be asking you to share your thoughts throughout this particular episode. And just for your information, it's much easier for us to see your comments in real time so we can interact with you in more of a conversational way if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching us there, it's in high definition. And I'd like to say it's in soft focus, but it's probably not going to be. But head on over to YouTube. You won't miss very much just if you do it real quick now, and because you'll have a much better experience if you join us there. I'm always interested to know where you're joining from, so do let us know which part of the world you're currently in, or as my dear friend Mary Alice says, where your feet are currently hitting the ground. It's not unusual for us to have viewers from at least 4 different continents. So let's see where we're connecting with today on this season finale. As ever, I'm being supported or held together, as I usually describe it, behind the scenes by my brilliant team, and they will share comments and questions as they become relevant, because honestly, I forget to look sometimes. And I never was any good at multitasking. So team will share when it's appropriate. Okay, so let's see if we can see where people are joining us from then. Maybe they'll pop up in a moment. But what I do want to do is start to talk a little bit about the title of this particular show. So what we've got is the title of The Procrastination Trap. Now, why am I calling it the Procrastination Trap? Well, I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. But what I want to start with is what an odd word procrastination is. You know, I've delivered trainings and continue to deliver trainings around the world. And when I'm working with international clients, we've had a lot of fun trying to find meaningful translations. The etymology of procrastination is towards tomorrow. So typically what we're doing is thinking about, not going to do it today. Let's move that towards tomorrow. And typically we take a really dim view of it. Why? Because we seem so intent on speed, on fast decision making, on fast action taking, fast everything, it seems. So in short, procrastination can be described as the act of putting off until tomorrow or the day after, or even the day after that, what should be done today. And this might include decisions. And when we procrastinate on making decisions, no surprise, it's called decisional procrastination. Or we put off actions like tasks, conversations, or even self-care. And when we put those things off, they are more commonly referred to as behavioral procrastination. So it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And I've played with both. And that's part of the trap. It's a game we play with ourselves, and typically the only ones suffering is ourselves. It's a kind of Russian roulette. Now, before I go on, I know that we have got some locations and some comments coming in. So let me just see if I can see those. Hi, Tammy. I can see you're joining from Portland in Oregon. You're very welcome. It's great to see you. And who else have we got? And that educating the essence is great. Helen, lovely to see you too. Helen from the UK. And I don't know where you are in the UK, Helen, but maybe it's a little bit drizzly where you are. Hi from Matthew in the UK. Chemistry Made Simple. Great to have you here with us, Matthew. And August and Brad from Melbourne in Australia. 5 a.m. Well, I think you win the prize at the moment. And Blue Roads Education. Oh, Patty, thank you so much for joining us from Virginia, USA. That's brilliant. Thank you. So I mentioned that I would just touch base, and that's a great example of my team giving me a nudge saying, hey, Joe, there are things you ought to take care of. So thank you for doing that. But let's now dig a little bit deeper into our topic. So procrastination is a complex interplay between emotional and psychological factors. And for introverts, these factors can be kind of quite pronounced. And it's a weakness that's often leveled at introverts, through feedback. And I'm using inverted commas, of course, because quite often what we're receiving is not feedback, but opinions saying be more extroverted. But we get that kind of feedback because we're reflectors, we're deep thinkers who like to take time out to mull things over fully, so we're sure in our own minds about the decision we're making or what it is we're saying. In fact, creative or overthinking is one of the roles that procrastinators might adopt to disguise or excuse their putting things off. But I'll share more about that later. So these emotional and psychological factors, then, they're coupled with our typically introvert heightened sensitivity to external pressures. And that can then lead to a kind of paralyzing fear of failure or judgment. And this fear can cause introverts to delay starting tasks, even when we know we're capable of completing them successfully. Yep, I know. So sometimes it is true that as introverts we procrastinate, but maybe not as often as we or other people think. But it is part of that trap we can get caught in. Now, let me be clear about something from the start. I have seen a lot recently about how procrastination is a trauma response. I'm not here to talk about that because personally that's not my experience. And I'm aware this may be controversial, she says, taking a deep before I go on. I think too many things are being explained away as a trauma response. Now, as a trauma-informed coach, I understand that we experience life very differently, and what traumatizes one person is potentially a breeze to the next. However, let's not use something as serious as trauma response and as being traumatized as an excuse for not doing things or as an excuse for our behavior. Interested to see if you have any thoughts or comments on that. So I'll keep an eye in a moment. Looks like there's something just popped up. So let me have a look at that. High Tech Mother. Oh, thank you for joining us. I know you're in India, so it's difficult time for you as well in all sorts of ways, not only in terms of the clock, but also difficult times in India. So thank you. And yeah, no false excuses needed from you at all. So if I'm not talking about procrastination as a trauma response, what am I talking about? I'm exploring the what and whys of procrastination from an introvert perspective, so that we all have some clearer ideas on how to overcome this if required. Now, I'm deliberately saying if required, because we know our own process. And if we need time, we should make our case clear and take that time. I'm now refusing, or at least resisting, dancing to anyone else's tune, especially if there's no real reason for it and it doesn't allow me to play to my strengths. So why do we put things off? Well, there are a number of reasons, and the ones that stand out for me as an introvert are, firstly, number one, being out of alignment with my purpose and kind of reason for being, my mission in life, as it were. The thing I'm grappling with is if it's not aligned to my purpose, then it doesn't make sense for me to put effort and energy into it. So being out of alignment is one of the big kind of causes why we don't take action. Most introverts have a need for authenticity, and we know how icky it feels to pretend all of the time. If I'm being pushed or pulled to take action or make a decision that compromises my values, I'm going to string that one out for as long as I need to, until I'm clear in my own mind and comfortable actually about what my planned course of action is going to be. Anything that feels unpleasant because it's boring or just downright unpleasant falls into that category for me and is likely to be something I'm going to put off. So if we're not aligned, if there's something that's kind of really unpleasant and is going to cause us some stress, that's probably one of the reasons why I'm going to do that. Sebastian's sister from New South Wales, you're very welcome. I avoid doing things I don't like if I don't like the person or the project I'm working on. Absolutely. And interestingly, and I don't know if you're an introvert, Sue, we haven't met, so I haven't had the experience of you yet. But one of the things I know is that because we're usually quite discerning about the circle of real friends that we keep, and quite discerning about the people that we can work easily with, it's not unusual for introverts to find they struggle and they procrastinate when the people in the project aren't the ones they really want to work with. The second reason then that we tend to procrastinate or put things off and not knowing where to start, either because the thing's too big or too difficult or too complex. I remember back in the 80s on time management programs, the quote that was usually bandied around was something like, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer was one bite at a time. Cheesy, I know, but there's truth in that. And planning is a fantastic tool to unpack what actually needs doing and in what order. Having had roles as a telecoms planning engineer and a project manager, I was always fascinated by people who advocated starting anywhere was better than not starting. I know that is how some people work, but I've also seen the absurd waste of time, money, and resources that starting anywhere can create. The third reason why we might procrastinate is fear of failure. And I'm going to add to that, actually, fear of success. Both of these tend to activate our defensive routines, those patterns of behavior that protect us from embarrassment, shame, criticism, threat, those sorts of things. And you might say, hang on a minute, how is success going to attract those? Believe me, they do. These days, I'd look at levels of psychological safety as well. So how safe does an individual really feel in their environment, whether that's a work environment or a home environment? Because when things feel scary, we bring out our defensive routines, those predictable patterns of behavior, noticeable to others if we are blind to them in some way. And they are the things that develop into limiting beliefs that hold us back. One such pattern is self-sabotage, where the individual subconsciously impedes their own progress when things are going too well. That success thing. And you know how much I acknowledge the role of limiting beliefs in not reaching our potential, which is why I have a short self-paced course called Flip Your Limiting Beliefs on offer right now. And until August the 16th, I think it comes with a free group coaching session. And that's never happened before and it is unlikely to happen again. So if you know that you have some beliefs that are holding you back, jump into that offer. Fourth, four fingers, Joe, that makes fourth, is feeling disempowered. When someone feels they lack necessary authority, control, or credibility, it may lead them to believe that a successful outcome is even possible. Helen has to go because there's a fire alarm going off. Thanks. Keep safe, Helen. So if we don't think a successful outcome is possible, then that's going to impact motivation, especially if the individual looks to external validation. It's one of the things I discourage, and I know that many of us can get caught up in that. But, whether it's in the workplace or in social or personal settings, we need to make sure that what we're doing is relying on our own validation rather than that external validation. And we've seen a rise with that, with social media likes, which then shape an individual's norm of behavior. I also tend to feel disempowered in open plan offices, as I don't have the right calm, quiet environment in which I do my best thinking and my best work. And in my opinion, that's why the return to office that most organizations seem to be kind of pushing towards now is misguided. And there's another thing that goes with that, which is that organizations seem to have stopped valuing thinking. It's like you're either doing or you're not doing, and they don't seem to value the time we take to think, which as introverts we often need. There's a comment here from LinkedIn. Do you know 20% of adults procrastinate? Oh, yes, I saw that. Yeah, thank you. Self-sabotaging cycle tied to our, fear of failure. Exactly. Yeah, thank you. So fifth on the list, genuine indecisiveness. Of course, that's also a thing, and it can be a real problem for some of us introverts if we get caught up in the overthinking without a clear decision-making process. People can find the breadth of choices overwhelming, and the pressure to make the right choice can be paralyzing. So there's a bit of perfectionism going on here too. So there is something else going on here, which is this overthinking. And according to Dr. Laurie Helgo, overthinking that we do as introverts is directly related to the level of activity in our brains. Not only do introverts have higher levels of electrical activity than extroverts, the functional neuroimaging studies found that activation is focused on the frontal cortex in an introvert's brain. And that's the part of the brain that's responsible for remembering, planning, decision-making, problem-solving, those sorts of things. So I find that really interesting, and I think there's got to be a whole show about that at some stage. But we do need to be wary of getting trapped in that overthinking, the inertia, that endless cycle that leads to nowhere. Educating the Essence is saying, I'm a master procrastinator. And this is just what I need to hear. Well, thank you for being here. And I hope this is kind of settling in with you. Parker, people's disrespect towards our working style or who we are can also cause us to procrastinate and avoid confrontation. Yes, it can, because what we're doing, you're right, Parker, is avoiding those challenging, potentially conflictual situations. And I think there is something we need to do here about reframing what we think of as conflict in a way. Now, as you can imagine, a number of these reasons may elevate anxiety or stress, including the example that Parker's just given us, which is going to further exacerbate procrastination. So it really is a kind of vicious circle. Think what happens to you when you're pushed to make a decision that you're not ready to make, when you haven't evaluated all the options. And for those who are fast decision makers, those who think any decision is better than none, this isn't a problem. But for the rest of us, it is. So procrastinating doesn't necessarily mean we're lazy, a bad person, or that we don't care. I still follow the wise words of Byron Katie, who once said, "I care, but I don't mind." You see, of course I care. I'm not a heartless person, but I don't mind what people say about me because I know the truth. Now, I'm sure you know when you're procrastinating, but here's just a couple of things that might just nudge you. Some people are priority inverters. They're the people that should be doing this, but actually, because they don't want to, all of a sudden that other thing looks more interesting. So if there's a difficult client call to make or a presentation to prepare for, what they'll do is clear the desk, tidy the drawers, and kind of do anything else they can. So are you a priority inverter? If so, pop PI in the chat and we'll see who our priority inverters are. For other people, they can be excessive socializers. Now, as introverts, we're not likely to do the kind of face-to-face socializing, but I'll tell you what we do. We pick up the phone and doom scroll sometimes through Facebook or other social media channels. So our socializing is done online as opposed to face to face. In offices, you'll see people not wanting to do what they do, and they'll go and sit on someone else's desk and interrupt them. The third thing, and I've already mentioned this a bit, is this kind of creative or overthinker. And saying we need more time to think about things and to think differently about things, to see things from another perspective, or to adapt or innovate, whatever our method of creativity is, sometimes it's genuine and sometimes it's just one of those techniques we're using to procrastinate. So it's important that we're really mindful about the real reason. So are you a PI, a priority inverter, an ES, a socializer, or are you an overthinker? Sebastian tuning in from Jupiter. Yeah, tend to procrastinate to avoid difficult people, as you said. Yeah. Of those three, I'm honestly a bit of all three. So I've played with all of those. And the reality is that what I need to do now is to catch myself playing the procrastination game and call it a day. It's kind of game over. So to start with, how do we deal with it? To start with, I think, as we've just mentioned, catch yourself doing these things so that, you can catch yourself in the act of procrastination, hold yourself accountable, call yourself out and pack it in. The team have said there are some comments coming in, so pop them on the screen for me. Parker said, as introverts, we catastrophize so much that we end up... Yes, yeah, catastrophizing is a way, is what happens when we do that overthinking. You're absolutely right. And Sebastian, I used to doom scroll. Now I have ways to control it. Perfect. And I think we all need those ways. Probably an overthinker is Patty is saying. Yeah, interesting. And Parker, not all procrastination is bad there. Not if you're right. But then I'm not going to call it procrastination. What I'm going to call it, Parker, is actually taking a considered view on things, properly thinking things through, waiting for things to have their moment, to have their time. But I'm going to call it something different then, because I agree with you. So a few ways to break out of, yeah, nice reframing, huh? A few ways to break out of procrastination. And I thought I'd share a few with you now. I don't use these as either or even all or nothing, come to that, but more as a list of possible ingredients that I may choose one or two of or combine as the situation dictates. So think about when you might use them and in what combinations. Check in firstly with the reason in the first place that you're procrastinating, and obviously begin by getting back in alignment with your purpose and values. If what you're putting off is because it's out of alignment, what do you need to do to get back in alignment? And sometimes that's going to mean having difficult conversations. If we're thinking about practical techniques and ways of working, now I bet you've heard of all of these before. So the question is, what stops you applying these? My personal favorite is to start the day with the thing I know I usually put off. It allows me to go through the rest of the day feeling smug, and I do like feeling smug because that thing is off my list. It sets me up for the day, because until that task is done, until it's ticked off, until it's cleared, it's just more clutter in my head, as the lovely Shelley said today. So do the thing you know you don't want to do first and clear the mental clutter. Then I think it's about breaking things down into manageable chunks, eating the elephant, that phrase, one bite at a time, but breaking them into small chunks and scheduling them in either at the start of your days or at times that really work for you. So little and often is a great technique, as it prevents you getting overwhelmed and depressed and in that low energy state that can come with that. Personally, I work best in 45-minute bursts, so that's my sort of Pomodoro approach to scheduling things. Next, is there a chance to share the load? Now that I have my fabulous team, I'm able to delegate some of the things that I know I would have put off, like the social media posting, etc. But they do way more than that. And being able to work it through with someone who understands and can pick things up is so liberating. It's also worth noticing your defensive routine patterns. And if a limiting belief has been developed, work at deconstructing that belief and replacing it with something more realistic. That's where that Flip Your Limiting Belief course comes in. One of mine was, no one really understands my mission, so of course it'll be difficult for me to delegate. How wrong could I be? But it does take the right team. Not anyone could have picked that up. The next thing you can do is plan a reward for when you've made the decision or carried out the task, taken the action, done whatever it is. I don't know anyone who doesn't respond to an appropriate reward, but be clear that you don't reward yourself in advance. That's what my husband used to do. So don't reward yourself in advance, because then the thing never gets done. Then empower yourself by stepping into your power and authority. Use your natural introvert strengths. That's what they're there for after all. As you can see, a powerful combination of the right ingredients, whether you combine them or use them individually, will have you be almost unstoppable. So are you ready for today's pebble? Are you ready for the pebble that's going to cause the ripples? But the pebble today is about being honest with yourself, catching yourself when you are procrastinating, as opposed to giving things due consideration, because I'm with Parker on this, there is a difference. Don't have slopey shoulders, don't blame others or kid yourself, because that really doesn't help you or the situation you're facing. Do things before they need doing, as there is more pain and stress in procrastinating, because now the deadline's tighter. And for those of you who say, oh, yeah, but Joe, I work better under pressure. Really? What kind of belief is that? Are you happy with the self-imposed stress that you're causing yourself by creating additional pressure? So, are you ready to challenge your limiting beliefs? And remember that beliefs are simply views and opinions that you've chosen to accept as your truth. Are you ready to do the important things before they come urgent? makes a world of difference when you do that. And maybe one more thing that you might be ready for. I'm opening up the show to have guest speakers for the next season, starting in a few weeks' time. If you'd like to be a guest on my show, please email my team at PR@flourishingintroverts.com. My PR team will pick up those emails if you'd like to be a guest on my show. And you're very welcome to suggest a topic that you'd like to bring and talk about too. So in today's show, I've delved into procrastination, the procrastination trap, and how to get out of it. It's like pushing at an open door. So it's well within your control. You just need to turn and face the right way so that you see that door that's ajar. Thank you for being with me during this first season of Dropping Pebbles in the Pond. And I look forward to seeing you again in season 2 with guests in the next season and a few more surprises. So do join me for that. And remember that we're all work in progress. And just like you, my flourishing journey continues. And to quote Lao Tzu, begin difficult things while they're easy, do great things when they are small. The difficult things of the world must once have been easy, and the great things must once have been small. 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. So, thank you very much for joining me. I don't think there are any more. I've got a comment here, and I think that's from Matthew, if I remember right. That last-minute pressure is real, at least for many of us with ADHD. I agree, absolutely. And how is it serving you? That's the question, I think, to ask yourself, Matthew. So thank you all for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time. Brand new season, brand new topics, new format, new surprises. Until then, look after yourselves and continue on your flourishing journey.